So we have our first question, and the first question that... I was just getting ahead of myself. Forgive me, Susanna.
I know we're very keen to crack on. Thank you very much. Well, why am I standing for UKIP? For me, it's summed up in one word: democracy. And I think it's a word that's very pertinent as we are this year commemorating the signing of Magna Carta 800 years ago. As you probably know, UKIP's main policy is to leave the European Union. Westminster is no longer the powerhouse in Britain. Our laws, most of them are made by unelected, unaccountable, faceless bureaucrats in Brussels. And unfortunately, we pay handsomely for the privilege, not just in terms of loss of sovereignty and democracy, but in monetary terms too. By 2020, we'll have spent some 65 billion net on membership of the European Union. Now, I believe that money would be much better spent in other ways, on the NHS, education, looking after our older and disabled people, defence of our nation, honouring the military covenant, getting the jobless back to work, vital public services that unfortunately have had to be cut, and most importantly perhaps cutting those debts which at the moment are racking up that we're leaving to our children and our grandchildren. I believe that money can be much better spent here for the people of Britain. It's also, the title of our manifesto is Believe in Britain, and I think that sums it up really. It's about giving power to the people of Britain. At the moment, I said we don't have much power in Westminster. What we do have is become something of a cartel really. You can't get much of a cigarette paper between the parties. In many respects, they are the same. And UKIP's about reconnecting politics to the people. At the moment in Parliament, MPs are whipped, they're told what to do. In UKIP, we're independent. Debates are rigged. We have this Punch and Judy show once a week on a Wednesday afternoon, Prime Minister's Questions. It generates a lot of heat, but sheds very little light, I think. We want to give power back to the people, and that means local and national referenda. It means you have the power to sack your MP, so whichever one of us you elect tonight, then you would be able to get rid of them if they weren't pulling their weight or we weren't doing our job properly. Locally, it means you would have the final say, for instance, on whether or not the A&E should stay at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital, and you would have the final say on the big housing developments that are going up around the edges of the town, which some people say are destroying our communities. So for me, it's about democracy, it's about believing in Britain, and that's why I'm in UKIP. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wonder, could each of you say what you believe to be the most significant challenge for Shrewsbury and Atcham in the next 5 years, and how you personally will support that if you become an IMP?
So, Suzanne, if you'd like to kick off, please.
I think in a way I've almost already alluded to it. I'm passionate about the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital and keeping the A&E. I think that's very important that we keep A&E departments at both Shrewsbury and Telford. Now, because although I'm a Shrewsbury girl, I was born here, grew up here, like many people, I did move away for a while for work. And I've worked as a counsellor in London. So I've seen the same things happening to the NHS around the country. And I don't believe that what's potentially going to happen at the Shrewsbury Hospital is a local decision. And that's why I think local people should have the say. I think it's a top-down edict. Why would the same conclusions, why would the bureaucrats in the NHS, the politicians, be coming to exactly the same conclusions about closing A&Es in every other part of the country? It's not a grassroots-up decision, it's another top-down edict. The development that we have, we already import 40% of our food. I think that's too much. Our food security is threatened. And if we keep concreting over the green fields around Shrewsbury and elsewhere in the country, we're soon going to find ourselves, I think, in even a more dangerous position. And of course, once our countryside's gone, it's gone. We can't get it back, and I feel very passionately about preserving the British countryside, our heritage. It's good for our tourist industry too, and that's also something I think I could help to do more for in Shrewsbury. It's such a beautiful town, such a beautiful place, but I think there's still more to be done. So tourism, jobs, Royal Shrewsbury Hospital, keeping our countryside safe. I think those are my top priorities.
In the Bible, the rich people are the idle ones who cause problems for the hard-working poor. Now we are told that it is the rich people who are hard-working and the idle ones who are poor. And so David asks, why have we changed this round? And I just want to also add, where do you stand? Which view do you take out of those two alternatives? Susan Evans.
Thank you. Well, it's a great question. Look, there's a middle way here, isn't there? Some rich people are very good and very generous and give generously of their time and their money. Some don't. Some poor people don't work as hard as perhaps they should to try and get on. Some poor people are poor simply because of the nature of their circumstances. And everybody, I think every one of us actually does the best that we can do with what hand we've been dealt with us at the time. And that's how it should be. UKIP's view is very much, I think, at the common sense centre on this. We don't support what's been perhaps quite derogatory called the benefits lifestyle, so we do support a cap on benefits. But at the same time, we absolutely must have that safety net, because any one of us could fall on hard times. Having an accident, losing our job, whatever it might be, and there has to be a supportive safety net there, and that's, and society must provide that for absolutely everybody. And I think UKIP's policies show this middle ground centre, common sense approach very clearly. So for instance, we want to take everyone on minimum wage out of tax altogether. We feel very strongly that the best way to lift people out of poverty is to reward aspiration and hard work. And why on earth should you pay any tax if you're only earning what society deems as the minimum that you can absolutely live on? At the same time, I think the 40% tax bracket is far too low at the moment. We would want to raise it to £55,000 a year. It was originally supposed to help tax the wealthy, but school teachers, train drivers, senior nurses, they're not the wealthy in our society. They're the people that really work hard, and again, they deserve to keep more money in their pockets too. So our view is very much a middle way. And certainly, personally, I work very hard with the unemployed to try and get them back into work. It's something I do as part of my voluntary work to help them set up their own businesses. Everybody needs a hand up, and I think that's what we try and do through our policies and through the practical voluntary work that we do too.
Thank you very much.
Is it right to expand the Free Schools and Academy programme when it has no clear benefit to the young people it claims to serve?
So Susanna Evans, I jump in, and then...
Well, I think it's about choice too, but more important than choice is having a range of education that suits every individual child. Every child is different, every child has his or her own skills, they develop at different rates and they have different strengths and weaknesses. And this is what we need to expand our education system to fit. And for me, I think one of the worst things that happened in education is that the grammar school system was abolished. Because grammar schools really did give children a leg up. The bright academic children who perhaps don't have the benefit of a public school, private education, could actually really achieve. We haven't had a Prime Minister who went to a grammar school since John Major. And I don't know that we'll ever have another one, frankly, the way things are going. And I think it's a great shame we can't bring them back. 5 independent fee-paying schools send more students to Oxbridge than the worst performing 2,000 schools do now. It was better in the 1960s. We sent more state school students to Oxbridge in the 1960s than we do now. And I think that's partly because we've scrapped the grammar school system. Now, it wasn't perfect, and I think you have an 11+ test, but then you also allow people to transfer, like they do elsewhere in Europe, in Denmark in particular, so that those students who develop a little bit later, but are academic, have the chance to catch up. I think that's the answer to actually building a more meritocratic society and a more equal and fairer society.
Thank you very much.
It's a known fact that immigration has been a very useful resource for the last 30 years in this country. The GDP has been strengthened very much by immigration. I wonder what the panel feel about this and the future.
Well, what Laura just said there is absolutely right. We need to start talking about immigration in a positive light again. And it's a real shame that it has been so out of control since 1997, when there was a sharp rise in the number of immigrants coming to Britain, that it has got a bad name. And actually, one of the things I really want to do personally is to give immigration its good name back again. Immigrants are not a problem in this country, but the immigration system that we have simply isn't working. To start with, it discriminates against people from Africa, from India, from China, from America. in favour of people living in EU countries who have unfettered access to Britain, yet other people in the country can't. And I was hearing a story today about a family, about a man who couldn't get his Australian wife over here, despite the fact that he could look after her, he could afford her, and so on and so forth, simply because in the mad rush to try and cut migration to the tens of thousands, as David Cameron tried and failed to do, they're preventing access to people from outside the European Union. It's also numbers. It's about space, it's about our island, it's about the pressure on housing, on public services. And I don't think it's right that while we've got 1 million young people unemployed in Britain who are desperate for jobs, that there are companies who are taking advantage of grants from the European Union of up to €1,000 for people from the European Union to come and work in Britain, and our own people are still going unemployed. And if I may, just a final word on refugees. I'm really proud that when the troubles first kicked off in Syria, and the Labour Party and the Conservative Party said we're not going to take any Syrian refugees, I'm proud it was my party that put a truck outside Parliament and said you should be ashamed of yourself, we must let these people come. And UKIP is fully committed to fulfilling our duties under the UN Convention on Refugees, and I'm proud we stuck up for those people in Syria first.
It seems to me that recent governments are trying quite a bit to bring in an American-style health scheme. By that I mean paid for by private insurance and not national insurance, with profit for shareholders as the driving force. What will your party do to halt, or even better, reverse this trend?
Suzanne Evans, thank you.
Well, UKIP is fully committed to keeping the NHS in public hands. It absolutely must be kept free at the point of delivery and paid for out of general taxation. And we are 100% clear and committed to that. I think it's a great shame that both the Labour and the Conservative parties in government and in opposition have treated the NHS like a political football. They've each tried to claim it as their own, yet both, in their different ways, have actually helped to destroy it. The Labour Party, when they were last in government, spent £14 billion, putting £14 billion into private hands in private finance initiative deals, which are actually ending up costing the taxpayer £76 billion. Now think of what that money could do if it was not this privatisation that Labour actually started. And then the Conservatives came in, and despite David Cameron's promise that there would be no top-down reorganisation of the NHS, that's precisely what happened at a cost of £4 billion. Again, a huge waste of money. And what is Labour promising to do now? To reverse that and spend another £4 billion undoing the whole thing. It's a political football. It's time the NHS was put with a different political party, and I believe my party could actually do a jolly good job on the NHS because it wouldn't treat it like that political football, and we would put £3 billion every year. We're committed to 20,000 nurses, 8,000 GPs, and 3,000 midwives. That's what organisations like the Royal College of Nurses, the Royal College of GPs tell us we need, and we'll find the money.
Thank you. Please, could you give an example of what, and obviously just to precede this as well, these are not party votes, these are individuals who don't have to vote for a party line on these kinds of issues. So we're really looking for, if you can give us one example, please, of what you would prioritise and how you would vote on a matter of conscience, and what values, or if they're faith-based or if they're not, what values would inform your decisions. So that's a difficult question, it's a vague question, but I'm asking you to show a little bit under the surface, please.
Well, faith issues have actually informed my entire life. I was brought up in a Christian household. In fact, my mother was and still is a local Methodist preacher. So it's something I've always lived with, really. I very much consider myself to be a Christian, although, like Laura, I think I'm not sure any of us will ever really match up to Christ's example, and I certainly wouldn't pretend to by any stretch of the imagination. I'm passionate about religious studies. I read religious studies at university. I worked for the BBC as a religious affairs reporter for 10 years before setting up my own PR and marketing consultancy, when I worked with people from all across the faith the spectrum. So I worked with Christians, I worked with Hindus, Muslims, Jews, I worked with everyone from faith, and I very much take the view that although myself I am fundamentally Christian, I do believe that we can learn from all faiths and none as well, so I very much take an inclusive view to that. And yeah, it does inform my politics. I think I have a very strong sense of social justice. I certainly do use parables in particular, I think, when I'm trying to make decisions. And the Bible and Christianity are very important to me, but as I say, within that wider faith sense too. I've learnt an awful lot from my Hindu and Muslim friends in particular. In terms of the sort of obvious matters of conscience, I don't support assisted dying. I accept the right of a woman to choose an abortion, and I support the current law. But I think one thing that really does anger me is gender abortion. And I just find it astonishing that that is not illegal. And it's something I absolutely think it should be, and I will fight for it to be.
Thank you very much.
If you were elected as a Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury and Atcham, what possible future construction or building project would you lie down in front of bulldozers for?
Who wants to go first?
I think that's Daniel's question.
Thank you, Daniel Kuczynski.
Well, if I was your MP and I lay down in front of a bulldozer and it rolled over me, then there'd be a by-election, which of course would cheer up everybody else on the panel, so I'm not sure it would be quite such a good idea. I will be in Bicton on Saturday, campaigning against plans to build another 360 houses in addition to the 750 that have already been given permission to be built in that village. It's the village where I went to school. I care about it very much, and while we need housing, UKIP's very much in favour of a brownfield revolution, and we have great policies in our manifesto to encourage building on brownfield sites. I said, at the risk of repeating myself, I don't think we need to be using our greenfield, so I'll be fighting that campaign very hard with the villagers. So a metaphorical bulldozer, I would definitely lie down in front for that.
How we can guarantee that you're going to keep your promises if you get voted in?
What guarantee can you give that all the promises that you make now will come true? It's not happened with Mr. Cameron, according to Thomas.
Well, I suppose I have a slight advantage because I actually wrote the UKIP manifesto. So you can hold me to account for just about everything, I think. One of the things I'm particularly proud of with the manifesto is that we are the only party that actually decided to do our sums and then go and ask a completely independent financial body called the Centre for Economics and Business and Research to actually say, have we got our sums right? And I'll be honest with you, they came back at first and said, well, this you're wrong, and this you're wrong, and this you're wrong, and the rest of it you're fine. So the bits they said were wrong, we went back and we looked at our sums again and we rethought. And we have actually, I think, 100% made sure that certainly the promises that we make in our manifesto are feasible financially. And we're the only party that's done that, and I hope we've set a gold standard, if you like, for manifestos in the future, that all political parties will do that, because people are fed up with political parties making promises and not being able to keep them. Now, it is difficult, you know, I know Daniel's party came into office and there was that note there saying there's no money, so I don't think you can write manifestos into law, but I think having them fully costed is something that every political party should do, and I'm glad we've set the standard.
Thank you. We're going to have our last closing statements now. Susan Evans, please.
UKIP won the European elections here in Shrewsbury and Atcham. We topped the poll. So I know that I could potentially be your MP, and I know that you actually care about the issues that UKIP stands for. So how can I convince you to vote for me? Well, like most people in UKIP, I've had a real job, I've had an awful lot of life experience, and I put the people of Shrewsbury first and always will. If you elect me as your MP, my party won't be my boss, the party leader won't be my boss, you will be my boss, and the power will be in your hands. and that is why I would like your vote.
Thank you very much.